Okay, with that, copywriting issues may come into play here.
Yeah, and you know WWE's pocket's a little bit deeper than Star City, so hopefully this doesn't come up.
Yeah, you sure about that? We got him against Melissa DeTora. We've got black-green versus Teamer, excuse me. And this should be fun to watch. Again, Saul drafted a blue-black prowess deck. And we watched him draft in the second draft, basically a red-white deck with a very small touch of blue for like a Mantis Rider. And now he's black-green. And there's no white hiding out in here for Absan. Absolutely not. At least I don't think so.
There is a Plains. I will try to identify the card that would compel him to put a Plains in his deck. And cannot find it just yet. So hopefully we'll figure it out. It's definitely nothing in the gold card column.
Yeah, which is what you would think. Wow, there's a Teamer Ascendancy. Saul's going to take a look at that, and that one is mighty powerful.
Well, it's high variance. If Melissa's hand is set up to maximize it, this is game over. But it's possible this is a pretty innocuous Fervor, which Soul may be able to raise.
Yeah, there's not really much use of white here in this deck. Interesting.
There's not for an unyielding Krumar?
Siege Rhino.
A Siege Rhino.
I found it. Yep.
Excuse me, missed that one. And Saul's been incredibly disciplined with his mana bases, of course, drafting primarily 2 colors. So it would take something like Siege Rhino for him to add a Plains to his deck.
Yeah. Mire Splash at best. I like his deck though. He's also got a Sagu Mauler hanging out on the splash, which is kind of nice.
Basically just a morph that he's splashing off of a couple of the common gain lands.
Yeah, no basic island in his deck. You saw Rashaka's secret there. Gets rid of an incremental growth and a forest from DeTora's hand. Let the hasty beats begin.
And now this is the stage where Saul just has to sort of cross his fingers, hope Melissa's hand is light on creatures, and specifically creatures of power 4 or greater, because that's when things get off the rails for Melissa. Card's so powerful when you're drawing cards off of it.
Yeah, Teamer Ascendancy is a very, very scary card to see in action. Melissa got that one late in pack number 1 and decided, hey, I have to take this. Now another discard spell. Hello.
This is a great way for Saul to try to combat this, is force Melissa to play off the top of her deck.
Yeah.
And Saul, an old school limited player, a man who, of course, loves a Mind Rot.
I, too, like a Mind Rot. I have to say it.
Not as much as Saul likes a Mind Rot.
Sure. Probably true, yeah. It's probably true. In for 1. It's 18 all, it looks like. Actually, excuse me, 19 to 18 to that gain a life land that is out there for DeTora, the rugged highlands.
When Saul was playing limited, many years ago, he's played these old formats where they were basically just card advantage fests before creatures got better. So he still translates a lot of those same philosophies and card evaluations to modern day, even though creatures have gotten a lot better and it's harder to sit behind a bunch of divinations and gravediggers and mind rots and beat your opponent that way. But the back-to-back Rosh Shocks of Secrets here, very good for Saul, trying to keep Melissa's hand in check.
Here's an attack for 2 from DeTora. Malka's going to go down to 16. See what he's able to find here on this turn. Plays a Swamp. Here's an attack for 1. DeTora's going to go down to 18. What's the follow-up going to be? Well, then. That is a Siege Rhino. That is a good magic card.
Potent.
Yes. That's a good rate.
That's a good rate.
4/5, Trample. Normally we see this one in Constructed. He played in Limited. It's pretty tough to beat. Malka will gain 3. He's up to 19. DeTora loses 3, down to 15. DeTora will play a Forest. Her mana is online. This is one of the issues with her deck. Her mana's not great, but it is online right now. She has 2 Teamer banners in her deck. You see, of course, the rugged highlands out there providing some mana fixing. Her spells are very, very powerful. It's just the question of can she cast them.
And is she straight Teamer, or is there a touch for a 4th color
Straight
in here?
Teamer.
Okay.
Here's an attack with Morph. Is it time to unmorph? It is. And that's a murderous cut. Ooh, boy.
Huge tempo swing here for Saul.
That is a big time beating on that Snowhorn Rider. I don't know if he could draw it up better than this.
The secrets facilitating the delve on the murderous cut.
Everything going according to plan right now for Malka in game number 1. That's for sure. He's got a Siege Rhino that can attack this turn.
Mind Rots and Terrors, man. We're right back in 2001.
The text may be different, but it all does the same.
They didn't make him like Siege Rhino back in 2001, but otherwise, this is a flashback for me.
I'd rather have a Plague Lord personally. Here's an attack for 5. DeTora's going down to 10. Skull Hunter's going to discard a card. It's a Savage Punch.
The 5th card that Melissa has to discard so far in this game.
My goodness, there's a Morph as well. Just pass the turn back. Man.
You just don't see games like this anymore.
No, not in Limited. I mean, that was a one-sided beating. Melissa's just going to pack up her cards. So Malka's going to win game number 1 here over Melissa DeTora. This black-green deck and these decks that he's been drafting, they're so different than anything I would have expected walking into the tournament this weekend.
And talk about taking the wind out of the sails of Temur Ascendancy. I mean, that did not do anything that game. I believe Melissa got to play 1 creature with haste. That was the extent of what that card did. And you can chalk that up to Saul's discard spells. 5 cards in Melissa's hand that game.
Onto the sideboard, the players will go. We'll see if anything will swap in or out here. Again, our backup matches, Artur Viela against Eugene Huang. So I don't know if we'll have time to move that way. This game certainly didn't move fast. We'll see if the second and or third one does as well.
So Saul does have a copy of Naturalize in his sideboard. If he has a lot of respect for Temur Ascendancy, he could bring that in. But I think without seeing a second target out of Melissa's deck, it's a stretch to bring in a Naturalize.
Taking a look at Melissa's sideboard here, she didn't really see a ton. I mean, there's not really a lot that she can do about, that kind of draw, right? When you're going to bring in counter spells against those discard effects, that's not really a thing in Limited, at least in my opinion. Draw just didn't line up all that great, and Saul's lined up great against hers. So, again, Melissa's deck very, very powerful. She has Nice Feather Raven, she has a Bear's Companion, 2 Snowhorn Riders, a Savage Knuckleblade, a Temur Ascendancy, and a Temur Charm as far as Temur cards are concerned. So, her Temur cards and her gold cards, very, very powerful. It's her mana base. It's a little bit scary. 7 islands, 6 forests, 2 mountains, a rugged highlands, a wooded foothills, and 2 copies of Temur Banner.
Only a couple gold cards in Saul's list. He's just base black-green. He does have a Rakshasa Death Dealer. He has a Sagu Mauler, which, again, he's just enabling off of a couple comes into play tap lands. So there's no islands in the deck. There's no banners, but he may be able to flip up the Sagu Mauler regardless. And then there's the Siege Rhino we saw in that game. But he has been having a lot of success this weekend with very conservative mana bases.
And his decks have just been, again, much different than anything I expected. The blue-black prowess deck really took me by surprise. I did not expect to see that at all, but 5 Jeskai Wind Scouts were instrumental to helping him win with that deck. And now this black-green deck is, again, unlike anything I expected to see. Maybe, I don't know if he's figured it out or not, but it's definitely different than anything I've seen anybody else draft this weekend.
Well, regardless of whether or not he's figured it out, he's at least demonstrating that there's a lot of room for sort of open-ended draft strategies in this format. He's playing decks that no one would have anticipated were good coming into this weekend. We did hear rumblings about a white-black Warriors deck, but Saul hasn't even gone that far. I mean, these are completely unorthodox color combinations.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. It's really, really kind of crazy. It's fun. When we were taking a break really quickly, Saul was walking by, getting prepared for the next match, and I hadn't seen his deck list yet. Didn't have it in front of me. I was like, hey, what are you drafting? He's just like, The Rock. And I'm like, that's a funny joke. Since you're that, he's like, no, I'm black-green. I'm like, okay. Yeah. All right, man. Sticking to your guns, I guess. It's clearly working.
So I'm trying to see if you can get The Rock going in this format. I'm trying to see what the analog is here. Give me a moment. I think that I could find out something.
Death Frenzy is a delight. Nice control card. Pernicious Deed-esque, as here is an embodiment of Spring to start game number 2. A Swamp, just passing of the turn. See if DeTora has the Forest. Well, it does come off the top there. Looks like there's a Wooded Foothills, too. I'm going to just play the Forest and then pass the turn back over to Malka. Malka does have a land. It's a Forest for him. Any follow-up here? Yes, it's a Smoke Teller. Pass the turn back. Embodiment of Spring will be a sacrifice, so it's now time to search for a basic and put that into play.
Karu Bloodsucker plus Hooded Hydra. That's the closest thing I could find.
That is horrible.
Welcome to The Rock.
That is not it. Sorry, man.
Still Plague Lord Hermit. It's the best thing I could find.
I'm sure at some point I will lose that, this limited format, and I will be furious now that you brought it up. DeTora will draw a card. Bit of a mana advantage here for Melissa. See if she can find something to do on the 4th turn. Just going to play Wooded Foothills and pass the turn back. Does have a copy of Temur Charm in her hand. Smoke Teller ready to get in there? Yeah. In for 2. DeTora's going to go down to 18. See what Saul has in the third turn. See if he has a third land, maybe a little morph action here.
And I wonder if Melissa has, you know, if basically she has enough mana acceleration where she can start casting some of her powerful morphs face up, or if she just has no action.
DeTora's going to sacrifice the Wooded Foothills with the Skull Hunter's activation trigger on the stack. So DeTora is going to search up a land. We'll see if it's going to be a mountain. Yep, it will be. Of course, when the raid is achieved here, target opponent discards a card, and the Skull Hunter will always come into play tapped.
I believe Saul's saying this is on the stack right now.
Tumor Charm is going to counter that, so Melissa does not want to get beaten down. It's counter target spell unless its controller pays 3, so an expensive mana leak here in Tumor Charm.
Probably the least exciting of the charms for limited play.
I think so. Still perfectly reasonable, but the other charms are very good for limited play.
It's not like you'd ever cut a Teamer charm. They're all high in power level for limited.
Thornwood Falls is the follow-up there from Malka, so he'll go up to 21. DeTora draws a card. There's land number 5. Here is 5 mana. See if maybe a Bear's Companion. A Treasure Cruise. Well, that's fine, too.
One way to fight some discard spells, that's for sure.
Absolutely. 3 cards coming here from Melissa.
And she can safely take this turn off at 17 life, facing down only a 2/2. This is a good spot.
You saw that's the reason that she played the Wooded Foothills. It's a sacrifice. Looks like counting here just to make sure that she does have the necessary amount of cards, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, she could fulfill the mana requirement. She had 3 cards in the graveyard plus 5. Oh, sorry, 5 mana plus 3 cards in the graveyard. I think Saul's just counting to make sure the card count is right.
Yeah.
And if they're counting up all the cards, they have to factor in that the Wooded Foothills essentially adds 1 to the count of the cards she's seen this game.
Embodiment of Spring, too.
Oh, yeah, Embodiment of Spring, yeah. So there's been +2 in terms of Melissa's cards.
Malka will draw. It's an attack for 2. DeTora is going to go down to 15. Does he have something to follow up with? He does. There's the Long Shot Squad. So, curving out pretty well here. Ahead on the board, but this is where Teamwork gets a little bit scary because there are big monsters coming. A Tusked Colossodon is where DeTora will start. And that is a 6/5 monster.
This is a big turn for Saul here. If he can answer this and punch through for 5 points of damage, he's still got the tempo of the game on his side, but if he has to slow down here, Melissa can start deploying all the extra cards she's seen in this game.
Yeah, Melissa's just trying to stabilize now, but she was able to play a 6/5 at 15 life, so you have to imagine she's feeling pretty good about things right now. There's a Swamp for Malka.
It's the type of turn where you would like to have something like Murderous Cut.
It looks like it's just going to be an activation of the Outlast here. And if that's it, that's not very exciting. There's a follow-up. That's not too exciting either. Just a Kintry Warden.
So this is a good defensive turn here from Saul, but after an opponent who's just resolved the treasure cruise, you want to be the one on the aggressive. So this turn is good on the surface for Saul, but it is problematic going forward.
Melissa's happy. She's attacking. There's a block. Here's a regenerate. Let's see what the follow-up is going to be. If she's attacking here, her hand's got to be pretty strong. Attacking into a creature that can just regenerate?
Especially since the play that Saul made this turn seems worse than using a removal spell, most likely. So I think Melissa can safely assume whatever her follow-up is probably in the clear.
There's a banner. Let's see what else she's got this turn. Savage Punch. Get that thing out of the way. Follow up is a Jeskai Wind Scout. Pass the turn back. Pretty good turn.
Pretty good turn, although not a disaster. What's really bad for Saul here is additional large creatures. That's what he probably can't beat, but if Melissa's playing small stuff and using removal spells, Saul gets to keep the regenerate back on defense. It's not so bad. I mean, given the circumstances, I'm sure Saul is pretty happy with what Melissa's turn was.
An attack there for 2. The Kintree Warden going to hang back on defense. There is the discard spell, going to get incremental growth and a forest. Unfortunately there for Malka, he turns over Rakshas's Death Dealer. Doesn't get to use that one this game. But getting an incremental growth could be important moving forward. Quick update for you guys. Our other match, well, we're not going to be able to get to it because Eugene Huang won way too quick. He wins the match 2-0 with his Mardu deck, and he's going to play the winner of this one.
Something to keep in mind here, Saul has milled over his planes there, so the Siege Rhino may be more challenging to cast, but he does have one of his off-color blue duels, which means that Sagu Mauler is a live draw here and something that may be able to break this game open.
Attack in the air. Malka's going to go down to 19. There's an island. This is a morph, and that is DeTora's turn. So DeTora crack the banner there.
Ooh, Saul wants to scope it out.
Oh, a little smoke telling, eh?
I believe that was an Ice Feather Aven, which is a really good one to know about.
Yeah, I believe that is the case. We'll get confirmation given that now Saul knows, Melissa knows what it is. It means we can know as well.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on over there?
Time to scout the borders. That's what it's time to do.
Smoke Teller just likes to see what's up.
5 cards here. So Sultai Scavenger is the card that's going to go into the grip. The rest are going to go into the graveyard.
Scavenger's really nice here, too. Because it is the largest thing in the sky, and Saul still has a Regenerator back, checking the 6/5. So the game's still wide open with both life totals pretty high, but Saul has to like his position here.
Yeah, the Ice Feather Raven makes things a little bit interesting, too. Saul has to decide, I think, now how much he wants to delve.
Yeah, it's especially critical because there's a very good chance this gets sent back to his hand at some point. So I like this from Saul. He wants to delve as little as possible while still leaving up 2 mana to allow him to regenerate in case the Colossadon wants to get frisky.
As it oftentimes would like to do.
Often does.
I don't think that thing likes hanging back on defense all that much. So these are the cards that have been removed for delve. DeTora will untap and draw a card. It's an island.
And, you know, Saul's milled himself over quite a few cards here.
There's the Ice Feather Raven's going to unmorph, pick up the Scavenger.
And hasn't really turned over his power yet.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Even seeing Siege Rhino or Sagu Mauler go to the bin. An attack here for 4 is going to put Malka down to 15.
Unless Melissa has drawn some follow-up to get rid of this Scavenger or to counter it, I was not a big fan of making an attack there. You're not pushing Saul down that low. That Ice Feather Raven is a huge complication for Saul as long as it's face down and the mana is available. So I assume Melissa has some sort of substantial follow-up here to justify that move.
Saul's going to remove the entire graveyard this time, or at least most of it. He's going to pay a single black mana for the 3/3 flyer. Sultai Scavenger is a card I've been very, very impressed with this weekend.
Flyers are so good in this format because the ground gets locked up that even full retail on this card is not that bad. And anytime you're getting it on a discount, it's very powerful.
There's a swamp there. I'm going to pass the turn back over to DeTora, Will Malka. So DeTora will untap again. Island in the grip. Didn't get a great look at what she just drew for the turn. Well, looks like everybody might be a little stuck this turn.
This is surprising because, you know, if we're being honest here, Saul has not really cast a good card yet. And he's doing just fine in this game, you know. He's got his defenses set up here. Now he's just waiting for one of his power draws. You know, the Murderous Cut would be huge here.
Looks like it's going to be a Force Away. That's a nice draw from Melissa. Definitely a powerful card there. So that's the bounce spell. And if you do have Ferocious, you get to draw and discard. And she does satisfy that due to the Colossadon. So get that annoying Regenerator out of the way.
This is kind of the play that I was talking about to justify the play from last turn. This is not as good as removing the Scavenger necessarily, but this still means that Saul has the uncomfortable decision of either taking 9 points of damage or trading his Scavenger for the Wind Scout, which frees up the Aven to attack the following turn. And what are you going to do about the Colossadon? 6 points damage is a lot to take here.
I need to worry about that too.
Oh, sure. I mean, this is not a bad follow-up too.
Now everybody is getting to the red zone, or at least most of the creatures are. Now, the reason the Jeskai Wind Scout can attack, of course, is because of that prowess trigger. It's a 3-2. You've got Savage Knuckleblade with haste. No, not enough mana, to pump it or to bounce it, but a 4-4 haster is still a 4-4 haster.
Saul giving it a good read. They don't make them like they used to, buddy.
No, they sure don't. So we'll see how Malka wants to block now.
He may just have to double block the Knuckleblade here because he might not get an opportunity to do so down the road. There's only 2 mana up. This is his one shot.
Yeah, this is the one, and I think the only shot he will get.
It is, I mean, it's an ugly block. Don't get me wrong. He's taking 9 points of damage. He loses his flyer, but I'm not sure what the plan is going forward.
Knuckleblade is really, really good. Melissa's first overall pick in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Makes sense. Bunch of mana. Is this the cut? Okay.
Okay, that's
the throttle. But
yeah,
it all works the same. It's a removal spell.
So now Saul may just be able to say, I'll take the hit. And yeah, he can redeploy his Regenerator next turn. And Melissa has no cards in hand, so things are tenuously stable for the time being.
Yeah, that's a tough break for Melissa there. If the Knuckleblade is able to, do what it wants to do, which is, maybe just trade with a creature there. If there's a double block that does take place to get the Scavenger off the board, or if she has one more mana, everything kind of breaks her way there. Knuckleblade's so very powerful, but a timely throttle there for Malka. Things work out his way. Smoketeller's going to get into the red zone. There's the Warden again. And there's a Morph, too. So now Malka's empty-handed. DeTora ahead on life, though, you see? 11-6.
It's possible Melissa sends Saul for weakness that turn. It wouldn't surprise me because he really wasn't up to too much. And put the shields down on the Knuckleblade for one turn, where if Saul doesn't really have anything, his blocks are pretty bad, but he was able to get out of that turn, and now Melissa needs to find help to be able to push through the last 6 points of damage.
I don't know if there are any good attacks here for her this turn. Doesn't really look like there are, but don't really have a great idea of what the card is in her hand, as she is reaching for some mana here. So the Pro Tour Gatecrash competitor will play Scaldkin. Pass the turn back. It's a pretty timely draw, I think. And what this allows her to do is possibly just win in the air of this turn, depending on what the morph is.
Yeah, I mean, it is lethal on the face of it. Saul has no way to prevent 6 points of damage to coming over on the air as the way the board is currently constructed. Though if he has something like Sagu Archers down and Melissa makes an attack, it is all sorts of bad.
And this is what makes this format so interesting and so compelling, right? Do you attack with all these flyers? If Malka has the Sagu Archers, which is a common,
or a removal spell,
it's a nightmare. When she's going to go for it, there's a block. Will 4 damage come through? All right, you go to 2. Kill that. Attempt to kill you. It's going to work out just fine. There is the morph. It's a team recharger, and that is going to do it. Melissa DeTora is going to tie things up here. We're headed to a third game between her and Saul Malka.
Very compelling action there. I mean, that was back and forth. It looked like we were kind of waiting for the one big draw step from either player, and Melissa able to find the last flyer she needed to punch through lethal.
Back to the drawing board they go for game number 3. Again, the winner of this match is going to play against a very powerful Mardu deck from Eugene Huang. Watching the draft, there were some Mardu cards that were going around pretty late. I remember that Mardu Rough Rider. I was surprised to see that thing make a lap around the table. I think I got a feeling of who it got to. I have a feeling where that 5-4 is now. But we will see who's going to play Eugene in the finals. Two very, very skilled players here in DeTora and Malka doing battle in the semifinals here in Orlando.
It's part of the fun of getting to work at these Grand Prix, which you and I get to do infrequently. As you get to work with some of the esteemed members of Wizards of the Coast coverage team. You see Rich Hagon next to Melissa DeTora, who's been faithfully punching away on the laptop this weekend doing the written coverage.
Yeah. You know he'll be headed to Honolulu next weekend for the Pro Tour.
Yep.
And that'll be fun to watch. You and I will certainly be watching it from a distance. I'll be in Seattle. You'll probably be home in San Diego. Should be a fun tournament. This tournament's going to be really interesting. The way this tournament influences maybe the way people draft the format should be interesting.
It's not the same thing as doing a constructed event because there's deck lists after it, and you get to see people's sideboards.
Yep.
The game's maybe a little bit more informative, but there are definitely people right now who are qualified for Pro Tour Honolulu who are watching this and getting a lot of information about, card choices, decks that are viable, all sorts of things.
To me, this format, there's a lot to learn.
There is a lot to learn. And with results in limited, watching the matches, you do have to interpret to some extent because the decks are a little less consistent. So, and you're not going to be playing against the same cards over and over again. But in terms of archetypes, the commons that matter, watching these games is informative.
Now this might open up a range of decks for people who are practicing for the format too, right? You may have thought that I'm supposed to draft one of the wedge decks or one of the clans, or I'm supposed to draft 4 or 5 color, but now we've seen Malka have success with this base black-green deck. We saw him earlier have success with a blue-black deck that had 16 lands in it, mind you. His second draft, he was a red-white deck with a minor splash of blue for Mantis Rider. So his approach might be an approach that has unlocked some doors for some people who are getting ready for the tournament.
This is some timeless limited play. This is classic draft. If you played formats like Invasion or Odyssey, just focus on card advantage, card quality, consistent mana, your mana curve. These are lost arts, but Saul's been bringing them back this weekend.
Both players going to lay out their opening hand, take a look at the starting 7, see if they like what they see, as this game will decide who's moving on to the finals here in Orlando.
Also, for those of you who've never seen him before, Saul Malka is one of the most stone-faced players I've ever seen in my entire life. Never a smile, never a frown. Maybe when the game's over, there can be that, but inside the match, expressionless.
Who is... I'm trying to think of a stone-faced player right now.
Tom Ross.
Yeah.
Stoic.
Yeah, that's what I had one in my head. I lost it. Jacob Wilson.
Jacob Wilson.
It's a wall across from you. You're not going to get anything.
Yep.
You can try. You're not going to get anything.
Josh Utter-Layton.
Yeah, nothing.
Stone-faced.
Nothing. Both players going to take a mulligan here. Did not like their starting 7s.
Now that this is a prerequisite for being a good Magic player.
Not at all.
Paul Rietzel is one of the most expressive Magic players that you can watch, and he is one of the absolute best of all time.
Yep. I could play against him all day. It's a lot of fun, actually.
It is.
It's quite the experience.
The source of many great quotes.
That's
also.
true. Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer, and someone where I believe if he ever decided to transition over to the booth, he would be one of the absolute best.
Yeah, for sure. So let's see what 6 these players can find. Can I believe Malka going to be on the play here? See if he's found something he likes in his black-green deck. Looks happy enough. Game 3 underway. Frontier Bivouac is what he will lead with. That's a blue source for Sagumaller, a card that DeTora has not seen yet. Rugged Highlands is how Melissa will start.
And he's not touching red for anything, so this is basically a forest that'll enable Sagumaller.
There's the Warden. There's a Jungle Hollow. Pass the turn back. Over to DeTora.
I feel like the Warden's one of the ones that gets played face up more often than face down. There aren't a lot of them. Does not have a ton of surprise value.
Surprise I'll regenerate is its value.
Surprise, I'm worse.
Yeah. It's not really all that exciting.
Not really.
There is a disallowed ancestor. So a modest start here for Malka.
Not really coming out of the gates too fast
No,
thus far.
not really burning it down as there's a banner there for DeTora.
Now there's Melissa.
In for one. down to 19. See if Malka has anything to do here. Now we're playing some Magic.
All right, this is a card.
Yeah.
We have a thing in play. It matters.
All right, Shasha's Death Dealer. 4 and 5. Now we're really playing some Magic.
All right, we got something going now. So this, the Death Dealer, of course, super powerful, but very color mana intensive. So if Saul is able to find another swamp or another forest, this becomes very problematic.
Did draw a swamp for the turn. You saw DeTora's play of Bear's Companion. Get a good look at that. Again, when it does enter the battlefield, put a 4/4 green bear creature token onto the battlefield. So no trample on that bear, but just a big 4/4.
One of the best designs and names in the set.
I'm a big fan of that card.
Yeah.
Also has great flavor text.
I didn't get to check it out yet. I'm sure it's sweet.
Yeah, it's good. It's a bitter revelation here for Malka.
Now, this is surprising to Bitter Revelation first because it feels like an attack from the Death Dealer is free. So unless Saul has the intention of trading the Death Dealer off for the Bear's Companion, the literal 2/2, it feels like he may have missed out on 2 points of damage. Because Melissa can't run a block there. Saul has the ability to make it either a 6/6 or a 4/4 that can regenerate.
Maybe he just didn't want to. I suppose maybe he just didn't want to risk. Maybe Melissa just going, "Hey, I will block with my Bear's Companion."
That's the risk, right?
Yeah.
Is Saul plays the 4th land, and he really hasn't done very much so far. And Melissa can sense that it's his whole turn to pump. But even still, Saul had the option of, even in that world, Saul has the option of saying post-combat, okay, I'll outlast on my 0/4 to a 1/5, which now matches up very nicely against the bear. So perhaps 2 points of damage that Saul could have squeezed out there.
DeTora going to get into the red zone here. The Disallowed Ancestor will get in front of the Bear's Companion. The bear will deal 4 points of damage. Now here is a Snowhorn Rider. So for DeTora's deck, it's just going to be big creatures. We know that. That's what Teamer does very, very well. For Saul, he's going to have to kind of juke and jive a little bit to work his way through this.
And what is his clean removal for these sort of situations? He has a Murderous Cut. He has a Throttle. Not a ton. But he does at least have two regenerators between the Death Dealer and the Kintree Warden. So he does have the option of say, well, I can just leave the Death Dealer back as a 4/4 regenerator, but that's all of his mana. And at that point, Melissa can start just deploying threats, not attacking, and overwhelm Saul's defenses. So Saul has to find a balancing act between advancing his board and also keeping up enough mana to threaten tricks and allow the Death Dealer to be a threatening blocker.
The planes are just the passing of the turn here for Malka. See what DeTora finds on her turn.
Magic players, that is time in the
It's going to start with an attack for 5.
If you hear that time announcement in the background, that is for the Sunday Super Series and not the Grand Prix.
Yeah, this is true. Some players still doing battle here in the convention center.
Melissa, you are turn 0.
Magic players, registration rewards, voucher redemption, and free entry.
Let's see how Saul wants to handle this. Give this a long thought because there is a block that is available, of course, which is the Death Dealer in front of the 5/5 double pump.
Well, he gets two options here. He can just block and regenerate and take 3 points of damage and save regeneration mana up in case Melissa has a follow-up. Pump and regenerate and risk a trick, or saying no blocks whatsoever, which is what he ended up doing.
Yeah. And there's another Snowhorn Rider. Big creatures.
The first one was good.
Throttle's going to take down the bear token.
Might as well run out the second.
Yeah. Big, big creatures. And that's what her deck does have. Malka will draw. Saw him use the throttle on the bear token, but those 5/5s are looking pretty tough.
Especially because they have trample, so the Kindred Warden provides no defense here.
Yep.
It may allow him to cobble together some sort of bootleg double block where he pumps the Death Dealer once and regenerates twice, but that's all sorts of risk if Melissa has any sort of trick.
Sultai Scavenger after removing the entire graveyard, leaving 4 mana available to double pump the Death Dealer if necessary, or pump and regenerate it. As we go back to DeTora's turn, DeTora will draw a card. Does have a copy of Temur Charm in the grip. Don't have a great look at the rest of it, but she will take her time this turn as it is quite an important one.
I believe Treasure Cruise as well. And if I'm Melissa, I'm probably just running back the attacks from last turn. 5/5 was good last time.
Maybe both are good now.
Well, it's getting a little bit riskier if she doesn't have a trick inside of combat, but the Temur Charm gives her a ton of insurance against something going wrong.
And there's the attack with both Snowhorn Riders. And now it's Malka who will think a little bit.
Judge Joe Huto, to customer service, please. Judge Joe.
He does have to do some sort of blocking as he is at 10 after all.
Yeah. I mean, he can push everything except for the 0/4 in front of one of the 5/5s and regenerate twice. That means he loses a Delver against one of the Riders, but there is risk of any sort of trick being a disaster. You can also go down this road, which I think is what he's doing, is set up this block, make Melissa order blockers, and then pump the Death Dealer accordingly.
Looks like the Ancestor is going to get in front of the Rider here too. It's not getting any better at this point. Not enough time to outlast that thing and make it larger.
No.
We are way past that point. Looks like the Scavenger is going to be first. The Death Dealer second. So here's an activation.
Most likely putting a regeneration shield on. And at that point, I think Saul's happy just to move to damage.
See if Melissa's happy to do that, though. She's reaching for mana. Again, we know about the Temur Charm in her hand. See if that's the weapon she wants to use here. Very careful as she brings the charm forward. And there will be a little bit of fight action here. The Snowhorn Rider that's being blocked by the disallowed Ancestor is going to go after the Sultai Scavenger. So hit that. There's another pump. Now don't forget, Temur Charm does give +1/+1 to the creature.
Yeah, so if Saul tried to put up a regeneration shield as the first order of business on the Rakshasa Death Dealer, that means he no longer can pump it to a spot that can trade with the Snowhorn Rider. So the best he can do is pump to absorb some trample damage.
And I believe that was the case.
Just go on with life. Yeah, that's all he can do.
So Malka's going to go down to 7. Good turn there for Melissa. Death Dealer's trying its hardest to hold the fort down here. It's a mighty fine card. We'll see if it can do it.
And you feel at this point that Saul needs one of his big plays. A Sagu Mauler could be excellent for him. A Siege Rhino would give him some breathing space. A Murderous Cut would be nice, but he needs something like that, something of substance.
One of the heavy hitters now.
Yeah.
Not time for those discard spells anymore. They were instrumental in him winning game number 1. But they're not great here.
Game where Melissa opened up on Temur Ascendancy and never got to keep a card in her hand.
Malka going to cast Debilitating Injury to make the Snowhorn Rider into a 3/3. So make that thing a little bit smaller. There's the Sandstep Citadel. And we'll just pass the turn back. Over to DeTora, who will untap those 3 lands and 2 creatures. Take a draw here. We saw Temur Charm last turn. That was pretty powerful. We'll see what she can put together on this turn, as she's getting very close to moving on to the finals.
You feel like one more trick pushes over the top.
Yep.
Saul has the board sort of tenuously stable right now because the Rakshasa Death Dealer is so large. But if anything happens, not only is he going to lose the Death Dealer, he's just going to die. He's so low on life right now. Now, Melissa with Treasure Cruise in hand, so even if she does not have a good trick here, she always has the option of just taking the turn off and Treasure Cruising while Saul's leaving up all of his mana.
Yeah. Draw 3 cards, figure something else out.
Yeah.
There's the Ascendancy. There's a Morph. That's a spell catcher. Now everybody's coming in. Again, if you're wondering what that Morph is, it's Keru Spell Snatcher.
So the best block that Saul has, strictly from the perspective of saving damage, is the Death Dealer in front of the 5/5, chump blocking a 2/2 with the Kintry Warden, which he has to do because this is a lethal attack.
Mm-hmm. Taking a look at the Ascendancy as Malka here. Creatures you control have face, and of course, whenever a creature with power 4 or greater comes into play, you draw a card. It can be very, very powerful.
Keep in mind the Snowhorn Riders have trample, so there's not anything to be gained by chumping there. So I think what the best thing Saul can do here is make this a 6/6 on this block and chump block with the Kintry Warden. Fall to 2, and facing down, at this point, 3 creatures, all of which are lethal, and a Temur Ascendancy.
Yeah, the potential for haste creatures, yeah. It's not looking great. Some creatures are going to die. There's the exchange. Malka's at 2. And as good as Rakshasa Death Dealer is, I don't know if it's that good. They're going to need a card like Siege Rhino this turn, probably.
It can only block once is the problem.
Yeah. Let's see what he finds for a draw step. Didn't get a great look at it. Did look like a spell, though.
Yeah, Siege Rhino lets him hang on a little bit longer, assuming the Morph is nothing of substance.
Well, the Morph is a pretty good card the longer the game goes. Again, it is the Keru Spell Snatcher.
Oh, that's just the next phase, is
Yeah,
not losing that card
Yep.
a turn or 2 down the line.
2 mana. Temur Charger. Pass the turn back.
Saul down to 1 card in hand. I think Melissa's going to pull a trigger on attack, even if she doesn't draw a creature.
Yeah, she can't attack fast enough. And that is going to do it. It's a bit of revelation, an extension of the hand. Melissa DeTora is going to win this match over Saul Malka. 2-1. And she is moving on to the finals to do battle against Eugene Huang.
That was a great set of games. Saul's strategy, if you are relatively new to Magic, looks unorthodox. If you've been playing Limited for 15 years, you remember what he did this draft from bygone eras of Limited formats. A lot of just raw rate 2-for-1s, trying to outgrind the opponent, but Melissa just too much power on the board. Didn't give Saul enough breathing space, and Saul finished the game with a card drawer in hand that he was unable to cast.
Yeah, again, if Melissa's mana